Hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Magic the Gathering with your host, me, to be here today, gone tomorrow. On today's episode, we're moving on to the second part of our Outlaws of Thunder Junction set review, talking about all the possible commanders from the main set and giving our power rankings, interesting card pairings, and so on and so forth. This will be separated into two parts for the main set, due to the sheer amount of commanders there are. So, with the intro out of the way, let's get into the first commander. Cool, the Unrepentant. Black, red for a 5/5 Scorpion Dragon Rogue. Flying Trample. Sacrifice 3 other creatures. You may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield, as long as activate only as a sorcery and only once each turn. Starting off strong with a really interesting card. Easily abusable activated ability. Sacrifice synergies and cheating of mana cost. This feels like a home run until that final line of text. Once per turn, and at sorcery speed, make this far less interesting than it started. They had us in the first half, but it's been hamstrung by that line of text to just make it okay. I think it's a realistic 5 to 7, could be powerful, but that once per turn at sorcery speed really lowers the ceiling of this card. Up next, Annie Flash, the Veteran. 3, a red, a green, and a white. For a legendary human rogue, 4/5, with Flash. When Annie Flash enters the battlefield, if you cast it, return target permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Whenever Annie Flash becomes tapped, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn. Now for me, this is an interesting card. A Sun Titan effect on cast, an Impulse Draw 2 when tapped, and on a 4/5 body of Flash speed does seem well balanced. At 6 mana, it could be a little overcosted, and in an ideal world, you really want to flicker Annie Flash. But they've made that impossible. It's a cast trigger now to stop any of that happening, which is probably for the best. Impulse Draw on 2 cards does seem strong, however it's only until the end of your current turn, which makes that slightly worse. What I think saves this card for me is the Flash and the fact that she just needs to be tapped. The Impulse Draw is not an attack trigger. Any ways of abusing untap effects, like Drum Bellower or Seaport Muse, and something to reliably tap it down, like a vehicle of some kind, could be really good in this deck. Overall, a pretty balanced card, 6 to 8. I could definitely see something breaking this in the future. The potential's there, but I'm not sure it's there yet. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Up next, Baron Bertram Greywater. A 2, a white and a black, for a 3/4 legendary creature, Vampire Noble. Whenever one or more tokens enter the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 black Vampire Rogue creature token with lifelink. This ability only triggers once each turn. 1 and a black, sacrifice another creature or artifact, draw a card. A typical uncommon legendary for a modern Magic set, it does 2 things kind of averagely. Once per turn is once more plastered onto this, and it drops the power level and combo potential for sure. I'm sure if you wanted to run this, you could find a way to make it pretty powerful. At least there's no restrictions on how many times you can use that second ability, so there's combo potential there for sure. I can't give it any higher than 8 due to that once per turn clause on the first ability, but 5 to 8, all things considered, is pretty decent for an uncommon legendary. On to the next one. Bonnie Paul, Clear Cutter. 3, green, blue, for a 6/5 giant scout with reach. When Bonnie Paul enters the battlefield, create Bow, a legendary blue ox creature token with this creature's bound toughness equal to the number of lands you control. Whenever you attack, draw a card, then you may put a land card from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield. This feels like the usual Simic lands commander for it in every set, but this time I'm not mad at it because it does come with a legendary card. 6 mana is easy to get to in Simic strategies. Draws cards, put lands into play, brings a body with it, solid design, and reach stapled on it because it wasn't aggressively costed enough apparently. The second ability being an attack trigger isn't really a downside because Bonnie Paul never really has to swing. You can send him Bow or something similarly evasive. And I think altogether it's a minimum 7 to 9. I can see a world where someone played this as a value commander in CEDH, but maybe it is a little bit too slow. Good card if not a little straightforward in its design. Next, we have Breaches, the Blastmaker. 1, a blue and a red for a 3/3 Goblin Pyro with Menace. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, you may sacrifice an artifact. If you do, flip a coin. Whenever you win the flip, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Whenever you lose the flip, Breaches the Blastmaker deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to any target. Cast spells, fling artifacts, this feels like it could be a very fun deck to run. Yes, the ability has a bit of variance, but sometimes variance can lead to the best games of Commander. Breaches is quite a unique design, well costed on a decent sized creature, and with the ability that I think is meant to be built around, Breaches is a home run design for me. While spell slinging might not be anything new, flinging artifacts and getting copies are both interesting enough that Breaches just works. Maybe not the most powerful due to the 50-50 shot of actually getting the effect that you want at the time you want it, but a 5 to 7 on power level for me can't make it any higher due to the variance, I think. Bristly Bill, Spinesower. 1 and a green for a 2/2 plant rogue with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on target creature. 3 green, double the number of +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. Now, Bristly Bill feels like a pretty good card. 2 mana to get 1/1s on your creatures and double the counters on them seems like a good rate. Seems very achievable to activate that second ability multiple times in a mono green landfall strategy as well. Make your smaller creatures like Lotus Cobras, Skewed Swarms, and just make them bigger and bigger and bigger. I think it's just much better than I originally thought it was going to be. It's cheap, it's efficient, maybe even CEDH playable due to that low mana cost. 5 to 7 depending on card supporting it, I think. Up next, Brewstar, Roving Rancher. Brewstar Roving Rancher is 2, a red and a white for a 4/3 human warrior. Oxen you control have double strike. Whenever Brewstar enters the battlefield or attacks, exile the top card of your library. If it's a land card, create a 2/2 white ox creature token. Otherwise, you may cast it until the end of your next turn. Now, Brewstar is an interesting one. Oxen Tribal isn't exactly something that I think players have been screaming out for, and as an Oxen Tribal commander, I don't think he really hits the mark. The double strike is nice, but not amazing. The impulse draw and Ox creation is okay, but I think overall, this card is just that. It's okay. I can't see many people playing this as the commander, but it seems like a steady card advantage in the 99. Bouncing it for value seems like a good option as well, so that gives a little bit more flexibility. I think you're looking 5 to 6 as the commander, but in a flicker deck I think he gets a little bit better. Up next, Calamity, Galloping Inferno. Calamity Galloping Inferno is 4, a red and a red for a 4/6 horse mount with haste. Whenever Calamity Galloping Inferno attacks while saddled, choose a non-legendary creature that's saddled at this turn and create a tapped and attacking token copy of it. Sacrifice that token at the beginning of the next turn step. Repeat this process once. Saddle 1. Now, Calamity reads really well. Doing that ability once would be good enough. Being able to do it twice seems very, very strong. I think there's a premium you pay for that extra ability though. 6 mana does seem a little expensive, but getting to do that ability trace I think probably is worth it. I think you're looking at 6 to 8 on power level. I'm sure there's plenty of amazing things you could copy with this. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Up next, Doc Orlock, Grizzled Genius. A green and a blue for a 2/3 bear druid. Spells you cast from your graveyard and from exile cost 2 less to cast. Plotting cards from your hand cost 2 less to cast. Now, Doc Orlock on his own as a commander I don't think is too good. He was obviously put in here to aid the plot mechanic and be its commander, but in the 99 of an Exile Matters deck, he really comes into his own. 2 mana discount is huge, and 2 mana for 2 mana, well, that's a no-brainer. Any deck that really cares about Exile will want Doc Orlock. I'm sure you could make a decent Exile Matters in Simic, but I think really you need Temur, that additional red, to really get the most out of Doc Orlock. So as a commander, Doc Orlock for me is a 4 to 6 on power level, but in the 99 of any deck that plays Exile Synergies, he is a home run card. Up next, Ariat, the Beguiler. 1, a white, a blue, and a black for a 4/4 human warlock with lifelink. Whenever an aura you control becomes attached to a non-land permanent an opponent controls with mana value less than or equal to that aura's mana value, you gain control of that permanent for as long as that aura is attached. Now, this card's interesting. It hits a design space that hasn't really been explored before. It's a card that does one thing pretty well, however, to really steal anything, you're going to have to take some lackluster cards in your deck, because you're going to need to play very expensive enchantments that don't really do very much other than take your opponent's creatures and permanents. Now, on the surface, that seems pretty good, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to rely on your opponents to play things worth stealing. And realistically, you're not going to be able to get this out before turn 3 or 4. You're not in ramp colours, so you're going to have to wait until you cast your commander to get the most out of your enchantments. I'm sure there is a very powerful version of this deck, but I can't see it in my head. 4 to 7 on power level for me. I don't love it, but it's an interesting design. Eartha Joe, Frontier Mentor. 2, a red and a white for a 2/4. Core Advisor. Whenever Eartha Joe enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 red masonry creature token with tap. Target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. Whenever you activate an ability that targets a creature or player, copy that ability. You may choose new targets for the copy. I do really like this card. A Boros commander that does something other than care about attacking is always fun to see, and I like having different options. This card actually seems pretty well costed. You don't often see doublers of any kind at less than 4 mana, and I think there's a lot of interesting things you could double here. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, because it feels like there's plenty of good options. I'm going to put this at a 5 to 9 for power level for me. I think it's pretty well costed, and I think in the future you really could see something break this. Up next, Fibblethip, Lost on the Range. 1, a blue and a blue for a 1/1 homunculus with ward 2. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. The top card of your library has plot. The plot cost is equal to its mana cost. You may plot non-land cards from the top of your library. Everyone's favourite homunculus is back, and this time he's got some powerful abilities with him. Fibblethip, either as the commander or in a storm deck, would be very, very fun, I think. Granted, I'm not entirely sure how much impact on the game you'll have with all the plotting you'll be doing, but when you go for a turn and you cast a couple of spells that you've plotted the turn before, and then cast a Mind's Desire, or cast a 8th Flux Reservoir, and then cast a couple of spells that you plotted beforehand, that's going to be really impressive. Gain Low's life, start taking your opponents out, it's going to be really good. I don't think he's incredibly powerful, but in any deck running blue, he's a decent little card advantage engine. 6 to 8 on power level for me. I don't think as a commander he has enough to push into CDH, but it could be wrong. I could be wrong. Up next, Fortune, Loyal Steed. 2 and a white for a 2/4 beast mount. When Fortune enters the battlefield, scry 2. When Fortune attacks while saddled, at the end of combat, exile it, and up to 1 target creature that's saddled at this turn, then return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control. Saddle 1. Now, I'm a big fan of flicker effects. Flicker Wisp, Eldrazi Displacer, and Charming Prince are some of my personal favourites. So I asked myself, why don't I like this card? And it's because you have to attack to trigger it. Relying on attacking to flicker my creature just adds that extra level of variance and takes away from the control I have over my flicker effect. Scrying 2 is nice, but at the expense of control over my flicker effect, it just doesn't feel worth it. And if you are going to build a flicker deck, mono white isn't really where I'd want to be. Of course, you can make a good mono white flicker deck, but realistically it feels like blue belongs in a flicker deck to me. So I'm not a fan of this card's attack trigger. It's just not for me. It's a 4 to 6 on power level. If you're going to build a mono white flicker deck, I think you just want to enter the battlefield doublers like Elish Norn, Mother of Machines, Gandalf the White, or Delny, Streetwise Looker. On to the next card. Geralf, the Fleshwright. Geralf the Fleshwright is 2 and a blue for a 2/3 human warlock. Whenever you cast a spell during your turn other than your first spell that turn, create a 2/2 blue and black zombie rogue creature token. Whenever a zombie enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on it for each other zombie that enters the battlefield under your control this turn. Now, as a commander, Geralt seems okay. At the head of a storm deck or a spellslinger deck, you could certainly do worse. A decent design, if not worded a little clunky. But casting 4 spells and getting 9 power across 3 bodies seems pretty solid. You can definitely see a deck doing pretty well with Geralf at the helm. In the 99 he seems a little rough. This card feels like it needs to be built around. 6 to 8 on power level. Could maybe break a 9, but I struggle to see a CDH deck making the most out of this. Up next, Geared, Mirror of the Wilds. Red, a green, and a white for a 3/3 human shaman with haste. Non-token creatures you control have tap. Create a token that's a copy of target token that you control that enters the battlefield this turn. Now, initially I was really excited for this card. So much so that I built a brawl deck on Arena to play it. And after over 20 games with him, I can confirm he's just okay. Geared takes a lot of setup to get going, and in my experience that's just been too slow. You take a lot of time setting up for a turn where you can get 3 to 4 tokens off the ability, and by that time you're just too far behind. However, in Commander you do have that extra little bit of time to set up, so it could still be a fun deck. Have fun copying Desolation Twin, or Helm of the Hosting something, for massive value. Overall, Geared is a fun deck to play, just a little inconsistent. I put him at a 5 to 8 on power level, but that initial setup is very important, and without that your game plan just falls flat. CDH is maybe a step too far because of that setup time you need. Up next, Gisa, the Hellraiser. 3 black for a 4/4 human warlock. Ward 2, pay 2 life. Skeletons and zombies you control have +1/+1 and menace. Whenever you commit a crime, create 2 tapped 2/2 black-blue zombie rogue creature tokens. This ability triggers only once each turn. Committing a crime is really easy to do in Commander, and how you choose to commit your crimes is what matters here. You want little and often, and realistically, you also want an instant speed. Committing crimes at instant speed is even better, so you can take full effects of the advantage of the ability. Once more, this card is hindered by that dreaded line of text, this ability triggers only once each turn. Gisa is a good card, but without that line of text, she could have been a great card. However, commit a crime, get 2 3/3s with menace is a good rate, and 5 mana on a 4/4 body with a ward cost attached, I don't think I can complain too much about it this time. 6 to 8 on power level, the menace on that anthem is pretty nasty as well, so altogether a decent zombie/skeleton tribal commander, but I feel it's a little too expensive to hit CEDH. Next, Honest Rutstein. Honest Rutstein is 1, a black and a green for a 3/2 human warlock. When Honest Rutstein enters the battlefield, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. For once, I've not really got much to say about this card. He doesn't feel like he was ever supposed to helm a commander deck for me. It feels like it's more meant to slot into the 99 of any deck that can take full advantage of that second ability. If you're playing a creature-based strategy in green and black, he seems just fine in the 99. As a commander, he doesn't feel like he does enough. A well-costed Gravedigger with upside. 3 to 6 as a commander. I think there's far too many options in Golgari for Honest Rutstein to really be the one in the command zone. Up next, Gem Lightfoot, Sky Explorer. 2 white-blue for a 3/3 human scout. Flying Vigilance. At the beginning of your end step, if you haven't cast a spell from your hand this turn, draw a card. Now this will be another quick one. Just like Honest Rutstein, this doesn't feel like it needed to be legendary. It has an okay ability, but in blue you have plenty of ways to draw a card, and the restriction to actually drawing the card just doesn't feel worth it. 5 to 6 on power level, let's move on. Jolene, Plundering Pugilist. 1 red and a green for a 4/2 human mercenary. Whenever you attack with one or more creatures with power 4 or greater, create a treasure token. 1 and a red, sacrifice a treasure. Jolene, Plundering Pugilist, deals 1 damage to any target. Another of the uncommon legendary cycle. The first ability on this one seems pretty good. Make a treasure when you attack a creature power 4 or greater is okay, but it's that second ability that really piques my interest. 1 and a red, sacrifice a treasure. Jolene deals 1 damage to any target. That means if you can slap Death Touch on Jolene, she becomes an assassin, and a very effective assassin. That'd be an interesting way to build the deck. However, to be honest, if I want to play Growl Stompy, I'll just pick one of the many other options. 3 to 6 for me. Karevek, the Punisher. 1 black for a 3/3 human warlock. Whenever you commit a crime, exile up to 1 target black card from your graveyard. You may cast a copy. If you do, lose 2 life. This card has a very interesting design. As we touched on earlier with Geezer, committing crimes in Commander is pretty easy to do, and the benefit of casting black cards from your graveyard seems pretty powerful. If you have the mana to cast them, that is. You do still have to cast the costs here. There's no cost cutting involved, and that's probably for the best. But if you fill up your graveyard quickly and recare copies of any black cards you have in there, you can have some pretty explosive turns. I'm excited to see what the community can come up for this card. It seems like the ceiling is pretty high here. 6 to 9 on power level. I think we could see a CDH deck utilising this in some way. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, because I can't decide if I'm just overrating this card a little bit or if it's actually as good as I think it is. Now, on to the last card of this part. Kambal, Profiteering Mayor. Kambal, Profiteering Mayor is 1, a white and a black, for a 2/4 human advisor. Whenever one of our tokens enters the battlefield under your control, for each of them create a tapped token that's a copy of it. This ability only triggers once each turn. Whenever one of our tokens enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Now, I actually really like the design of this card. Rather than taxing your opponents for making tokens, it allows you to profit off it. Once more, it does have my least favourite line of text here, once per turn. However, in this case, I don't hate it, and that's because of how it's worded. If your opponent makes multiple tokens at the same time, you still get that many tokens, so big splashy effects are still being punished here. And unlike most instances of once per turn, this card relies on your opponents triggering it, so I can see a world where your opponents mess up a sequencing, causing them to make decisions that you probably wouldn't usually. I do think Kambal will see some CEDH play as well, mainly due to the sheer amount of treasure tokens knocking around in that format. Kambal really does punish that player who's just got a Dockside Extortionist on the battlefield, and will often change the math in that kind of game. They make a bunch of Dockside tokens, you drain them for a good few life. That life gain will add up over the course of game. So I think a solid 6 to 9, Kambal scales well with the game, token doublers make Kambal extra nasty, and that drain effect will add up. And that's it for the video. Part 2 will be up next week, so be sure to subscribe and ring that bell icon to be notified when it goes live. Leave a like, comment, and follow me on Instagram and X at Demir_TGT. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.